It looks like we've got people entered in and the participants are coming. My name is Lynn Yanyo. I'm the Executive Director of ISBM and your host for today's Town Hall of Marketing in Uncertain Times. I'm going to see if I can get this. So once I figure out how to make the slides advance, I said I wasn't going to say that out loud, but I said it out loud. Maybe it just requires patience, which is difficult for me. Okay, so or Lori will advance the slide. So let me just tell you a little bit about ISBM. Thank you so much for joining us. There we go. We are a non-commercial organization that tries to help our member corporations get better at B2B marketing. We have a wide range of companies that have joined. We have about 40 member companies, and we have over 30 fellows that are academicians from around the world, and they are the best at what they do. And then we have another dozen or so organizations that support us in various ways as partners delivering content. If you want to learn more about us, please go to isbm.com. And at the end of this, I will tell you a little bit more about what's on our calendar coming up. So let me tell you a little bit about how to interact with us on the town hall. So in this town hall, we'd love for you to ask questions, and you can do that in two ways. You can either raise your hand, and if you're trying to figure out where the hand raise thing is, it should be at the bottom of your menu downstairs, so it's down at the bottom of your screen. So if you scroll down and it's gone, just roll over that, maybe it'll pop it up. So you can raise your hand and you can let me know, I'll be watching, that you're wanting to ask a question, or you can type your question into the chat box. So you'll see a little note down there that says chat. You click on that, you can type in that. You can type it to everyone, or you can type it to just me, and that way I'll see it. And then if you type it to me, I can then make sure that I field the question when we're talking later. If you have a question about the system or something's not working, feel free to type in the chat box. Lori and I are both monitoring it, and we'll be happy to help you make sure that you're connecting. There's always a question that comes afterward, which is, what if I want to see this later? So this is being recorded, and it will be available on our website in about 24 hours after it shows, and then you can feel free to share it with others or go back. Okay. So let's get into this. Before we get started with the whole thing, we've been doing this poll every 2-3 weeks just to see how we're all doing. So in this case, we're going to ask you to vote. You'll see a screen pop up and you'll just click on the answer that you want. So as a temperature check, let's just see how we're thinking. At the low end of the scale, it's doom and gloom and I'm depressed and it's only going to get worse. And then in the middle of the scale, well, it's not so bad, but I see some cloud lifting. And at the top of the scale, I've got this, I see light at the end of the tunnel. So Lori, would you put up the poll? And so we'll wait a few seconds, particularly as this is the first poll. So that means we have to get ourselves organized and ready to click, and just pick whatever one of those feels like where you are today. Thank you for voting and letting us know. We're up at about 30 participants, 28. So we're just going to wait for a few more. I'm usually looking for about 80-20 rules. So, okay, thank you, Lori. So it looks like we're all sitting closer to the top. There are a couple of us where it's tough. And we want to just acknowledge that times are difficult all the way around. But we're handling it, we're taking steps, and we think things are getting better. So that's great. And that's about where we were, maybe just a little lower than we were 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think now that we all know that we can get outside, we're starting to wonder what is going to happen. Our next poll, if we could also do that next one. Sorry, there we go. Let's just, I guess I did that too quickly. So our next poll, Lori, if you could help me with that. There we go. Is how's our budget, right? So it's been 3 months almost, right? So things in many cases for people where we were not even sure yet. So if you would please vote and just tell us, how are things going for your businesses? This is helping us try to figure out how to time and provide resources to you. So let's give it maybe another 10 seconds. And a little bit more. It's actually swinging a bit. Okay, let's do with that, Lori. That looks good. And that poll. So not surprisingly, a large proportion of us say that our budget has decreased, or if it's not decreased, at least it's frozen. We did a few member calls right before the Memorial holiday, checking in with member companies, and a lot of them expressed the fact that they're actually going through a complete restructuring of their strategy for 2020, which doesn't surprise you either. So so thanks for that. We'll set that aside. Thanks for that. And then we'll have one at the end where we're going to ask you how we did. So I hope you'll respond as well for that one. All right, let's get into the town hall. And again, if anybody has a question about the system, feel free to type in the chat box. And if you have a question at any time, please type in the chat box or raise your hand. I can see your hand raised and then I'll call on you. So I'd like to introduce our two panelists. This is an interesting conversation that we've tried to put together between Josh Albert and Mark Kempter. So Josh is the Vice President of Business Development for Godfrey, and Godfrey is one of our member companies. Godfrey is nationally ranked as the business-to-business marketing communications agency, and it's in Lancaster, PA. As Director of Business Development, he is a leader and provides business sense to help Godfrey form client relationships. I think you're going to hear Josh talk a lot about client relationships, and I'm hoping that you'll take advantage of our member and ask some questions to learn more about how those relationships work. Before Godfrey, Josh was an operations manager for an education marketing company in Lewsbury, PA. He has had 14 years of experience in sales and sales management. And he lives in Middletown with his wife and two daughters and son and two dogs. And I was tremendously disappointed that the daughters are not on the video because they were darned cute when we Mark Kempter joins us, and he was the founder and creator of Core, which was a creation studio that was a collection of strategists, writers, designers, directors, artists, and developers. It was named one of the top 10 creative agencies by Graphics Magazine in its third year, and it was consistently at the top for creative product innovation and dedication to the craft. After 15 years, unfortunately, it fell victim to the 2010 downturn. Mark joined Mullen in 2014 and helped them merge with Lowe to become Mullen Lowe in 2016. Probably the one client I loved that he had was Harley Davidson. They were my customer when I was at Lord, and they are fun to work with. I'm sure we both miss them. And he had oversight for all their offices, including 900 people and a $200 million revenue line. Mark has also served as an adjunct professor for many years at the journalism school at the University of Missouri and VCU Brand Center. And he lives in, well, he splits his time, or maybe he's actually completely Missouri, where we find him now, and loves to spend time outdoors. And we both were lamenting that we don't get enough time outside. So I welcome both Josh and Mark, and I encourage our team to please, the folks that are out there in the audience, to please take advantage of this opportunity to ask those questions you probably couldn't ask of your own agency, or if you're not currently working with an agency, this is your chance to, even if they're embarrassing, go for it, right? This is our opportunity. So I'm going to start a lead off just to warm everybody up, and Josh and Mark already know a little bit of the questions I'm asking, so this will not be a surprise to them. In this new age of weirdness that we've got going on for the last several months, where we've been constrained about where we can be and even what it looks like going forward in the future, can you each tell me maybe top three, the things that you see have changed in the agency-client relationship before and after COVID? So we're going to start with Josh. So Josh, take it away there. Give us some views from your side.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. Just so everyone understands, just a quick plug here where we're coming from. So Godfrey works with mid-market to enterprise level industrial companies. So the perspectives that I'm pulling come from places that all of the other members here on this call are in terms of, industries and types of businesses. And what we've seen, one of the biggest things is going to be more emphasis on ROI, and that's just a result of the budgets. And as the polls that Lori and Lynn launched here at the beginning highlight, a lot of us are facing either decreased budgets that will remain with us through at least this current fiscal year and maybe will carry over into the next fiscal year, or we're working with budgets that have been completely paused. ROI and emphasis on that is going to become a huge priority. And it's a little bit of a double-edged sword there, because a lot of the things that we have to do right now as businesses to adapt to the current pandemic may not necessarily have an immediate ROI. You think from a manufacturing standpoint, you have to retool some of your manufacturing facilities to meet CDC guidelines. As a business, you have to create spaces for your employees to interact in safe ways, and the same with your customers. So you're changing your operations, and that increases costs. The same thing happens on the marketing side of this. We have to spend time adapting our messaging. We may have to reschedule events. We may have to move something online that has an increased cost over an in-person experience. So, and those things may not have an immediate ROI or a way to measure that. So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword out there to say, there's going to be more emphasis on ROI, but some of the things we have to do, at least in the short term, and throughout this current fiscal year, may not have an immediate return there. So working closely with your agency, I think clients and agencies need to collaborate a bit more on justifying budgets, thinking about where to invest those dollars in order to get the best return, and figure out what that story looks like. So that's definitely, I think, the first and probably the major thing that we need to consider as we think about the change in client agency relationships. And the other is sort of obvious as well, is how do we work and collaborate at a distance? Mid-market to enterprise industrial companies have often relied on agencies that are near them, partners that they can interact with more frequently in person. And that's been the way that this industry has worked for quite a long time. And we've relied heavily on those things, interacting at customer events, trade shows, conferences, in-person meetings, all those kinds of things. So, how do we work at a distance? Obviously puts more emphasis and reliance on technologies, tools, processes, things that, we may not have been well versed in before, and there may not have been a lot of focus on, the type of platform that you use for project management. How is the client incorporated in that? How do the agencies and clients communicate timelines, deadlines, things like that when we're all working remotely, not just the client agency sort of relationship there at a distance. So I think those would be two of the big ones: emphasis on ROI, and then how do we work and collaborate at a distance.
Great, thanks a lot. Mark, do you want to give us your thoughts on what it looks like from your side today?
Sure. I think right now agility is something all of us are thinking about. Whatever marketing plans you guys had in the works probably are changing, and you're not sure where they're going to go, right? So the really good news is I've worked in agencies for 30 years. We're a people business, and we're quick on our feet. So agencies are really good at turning on a dime, getting rid of what they thought they were going to do, and figuring out a new way to start. But the bad news that sort of comes along with that is that all of you have cut your budgets. And if you think about an agency business model, it is 90% the people. And across the industry, small, medium to large agencies have all let go a lot of their staff. So while they're really good at agility and they're going to be able to move, when you make this first phone call and you say, we need to start up and let's get going, chances are they're not going to be prepared to start at the rapid pace that you're used to.
Right. Yeah. So we've been hearing from our member companies as well that they've had to cut staff, which is interesting because I suspect that where they're going to get the work done is back at the agency. Right. So how does that happen? So Josh, maybe follow on this question. So if both budgets are cut, what can a client expect when they come, or what should they expect? I mean, how should they behave better in order to make sure that everybody can get the work done at a reasonable pace?
I think communication there is key. I mean, understanding the client's goals, timelines, what the drop dead dates are, how it's incorporated into other initiatives, if there's existing things that we could leverage. But as an agency, we're taking our staff and looking at, how can we take someone that has a particular skill set and leverage them in other areas. So, we're doing a lot of that. And so finding ways to work with your team differently, and understanding that, maybe your contact that you had a couple weeks ago isn't the one that is going to be working directly with you, but knowing that we have flexibility, and we have that sort of agility as a small firm to be able to work a little bit differently is certainly part of that.
Do you expect that clients are putting work on pause, or are they actually canceling projects entirely?
It depends on the industry. We've seen a little bit of both. Some of our clients, most of our clients are supporting life-sustaining businesses in some way, either through supply chain or, products that are then being used in construction or healthcare, manufacturing, things like that, as many of us on this call are. And so, yeah, it really depends. In some cases, we've seen programs continue on completely without any sort of impact. In other areas, we've seen budgets cut, and programs put on pause. So it's been a good mix, basically kind of aligning with what we've seen here in the beginning as far as the poll goes. Yeah.
I think though, what we're also seeing is some really strange things that are happening out there. So while you think about medical and you think about the need for medical has never been greater, I'm in a rural area, and this pandemic is literally going to put a lot of rural hospitals out of business, because the pandemic didn't hit here as bad, but all of their other business, pre-thought out procedures went away, and that hasn't returned. So they're struggling. Another client I have is in the fishing business. Fishing is through the roof right now. Fishing license sales are through the roof. However, people who sell fishing equipment have had to shut their stores, and people who distribute fishing equipment have had to shut their distribution centers. So while the business in theory is through the roof, the revenue is horrible because people can't find product to buy. So it's hard to tell where things are happening right now. Like, there's so many disruptions. Again, I think it's like, think through it and figure out, how are we going to react?
Mm-hmm. There's a question that came in as we were talking about the cuts from both sides. And do you guys have a perspective, each of you could answer this, of the kinds of either skill sets or types of people or job descriptions that we should not cut during this time on either side?
Well, I think from a human standpoint, we'd all think the answer is that everyone, right? And on the agency side, Josh, you can add in, but all parts are important. It's not like just the creative team is important or just the strategists are important. Agency, they're people business. All of those people work together to create an end product. So in a really good agency, there isn't a weak link, and there isn't a part that you say we can cut.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I'd agree with that. I think oftentimes, the perception is with agencies, small or large, is that it can take a lot of people to get programs, planned and executed. And that's certainly true. I mean, to Mark, as to your point, there are specialty areas and specialty roles that, finding one person that can do 10 different things well was really difficult. So when you look at specialized areas of expertise, having individual roles, as we call them, subject matter experts is really important. So, we'll look at things like that. A lot of our digital team members can do, SEO and paid media, and maybe do social media as well. So we look at those areas and say, okay, well, did we have somebody that was highly specialized here and they can only do one thing, or can they do 3 to 5 things, and how can we leverage them now across 5 accounts instead of 1 account? So it's just thinking about those ways that we're deploying our team and doing that across all of the parts of our business, from the accounts to strategy to creative to our channels group on down through.
So as an individual, the methodology might be being a generalist is a good thing. That you're more valuable at this moment in time.
Sure.
Being able to generally, or being able to step back into some roles if you need to be, right? That's just a thought. Earlier when we were planning for this, we were talking a bit about things are changing, and Mark, you mentioned that people are going out and rethinking their entire strategy, but somehow that has to get communicated back to your agency partners. And how would we do that best, most efficiently, and when should that happen?
Well, as early as possible. I mean, good agencies and people who work at good agencies need to understand the business issues. So you can't just sort of like do it all on your side and then deliver the project at the end to them and expect that you're going to get the best result. I think the earlier you can bring them into the process, tell them the problems you have, and listen to their perspectives, because they work with lots of different companies. So they see lots of different types of solutions that perhaps you're not seeing in yours. People are always shocked when I tell them this, but honestly, you mentioned Harley Davidson. There's similar marketing problems that I've seen with a company like Harley Davidson to a brand like Gucci that I work with. And you're like, there's no possible way that is, but there are patterns when it comes to marketing. So your agency, when they're in early, can help you solve some things and give you ideas that might lead to new ways of thinking you're not considering.
Yeah, great. Josh, do you have any good examples of people who've done it well with you?
As far as
dumping what you currently had in the plan and quickly changing over to the new strategy, which is what it feels like right now, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's happening every day right now with our clients. I mean, we had one client in particular that had a roadshow planned, for instance, and you know, that had multiple different touch points across the entire country, and they were all these little micro in-person events that were planned. And so we quickly had to work with them and talk about how could we shift this to a digital approach. You know, how could we take a different approach? And we're still going back and forth and helping to support them in that discussion, because you know, it just really depends right now as to what parts of the country you can start doing even small gatherings. You know, all of our clients have relied on trade shows, for instance, to drive demand for products, launch products at trade shows. That's a very common practice in business to business marketing. And so thinking about we're helping clients launch products in different ways, you know, looking at developing 3D animations, videos really highlighting the features of a product, kind of finding new ways to do product demonstrations, but also thinking about how do we communicate this in the right way. You know, are we using live social media? Are we using webinars? Are we using, you know, pre-recorded video? There's just so many different ways to do that. But yes, it's an everyday thing right now. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from this part of the discussion is, you know, clients and agencies need to react quickly, and that requires ongoing and transparent communication. It includes, you know, just being able to react to those market conditions literally overnight, whether it's the pandemic or other things. And, you know, that just takes an ongoing dialogue with both your agency and internal contacts to be able to do that well.
Well, I'm glad you brought up that technology, because I think that's an interesting area. You know, in the last few months, we've all gotten better at technology that we thought, I'm not even sure we needed it, but now it's essential. And we've been talking about how do I replace, especially in the B2B world, where visiting your manufacturing location is something that every customer expected to do, and now we can't do that. And we've also discussed how it's a lot easier to have this Zoom conversation with somebody that you already have 15 years of time with. But when I'm trying to sell to someone new who's never met me or my company and what I do, I need new tools. So is that something that the client brings to the agency and says, help me with it? Or is that something the agency says, hey, you guys should think about this? How does that work?
I think it works both ways. You know, one of the things that we've always said, and the benefit of us working with mid-market to enterprise level companies, is we're able to do a broad range of projects, you know, high-end, you know, $100,000 to $1 million programs, all the way down to, you know, some smaller things. And so we're able to experiment with some of those technologies in ways that we can then adapt for, you know, more of the mid-market company out there. So, you know, it's definitely kind of figuring that out. Kind of lost my train of thought there.
You know, I do think one important part here, though, is, and you said it, Lynn, is it's easier to use technology when you have a relationship with someone. So I think technology is really good at removing humanity from the equation. And I'm a big believer in marketing. Marketing is all about humanity. Even though it's B2B, there's still humans that are making buying decisions on the other side. So with your own agency or your own partnerships, you have to find a way to break past or not lean on the technology so hard that you forget about the subtleties that are involved in your conversations and in doing work.
Well, and you also have to think about the situation that the audience is in. You know, there's a lot of talk about Zoom fatigue, right? You know, we're all spending so much time sitting in these virtual events. And, you know, thinking about, do you really want to run a full day virtual conference and expect that your audience is going to sit there from, you know, 8 o'clock in the morning through 5 o'clock in the evening, and that all of the content is live and you're not providing any of it recorded on demand? You're not providing other ways or times for them to access that content. You know, does it need to be a full day conference? You know, can you roll things out and communicate it in different ways? Just taking into consideration we're all in different places. We might have kids running around the house, which I don't at the moment, but, you know, can't sit down and just interact with a conference in the way that you would if you were going and traveling to a trade show. And the same to the human element. I mean, we just participated as an exhibitor and a sponsor and speaker for an online conference. We had done one a few weeks ago that was, I could put together a list of things not to do when you execute an online event. We were a participant in that one, and it was recorded. It was, you know, presented on demand. There was no MC. There was no real like engagement for the event. It was like you were watching a series of webinars in like a conference for the day, and that's not very fun. That doesn't come across. Participating in last week had virtual networking. It was almost like a speed dating type thing through chat. The event host had set it up to where you could interact for 3 minutes. They did increase that to 5 minutes based on feedback from participants, but it was like, you know, we all go into this platform, you know, you click participate, and it now starts sort of putting you in touch with other people that are attending the event. And so you can sit there and have up to a 5-minute conversation with somebody. If you meet somebody that you're really interested in connecting with, you can exchange contact info, or you can move that video conversation offline into another platform. And so that was something that I think really allowed for that human connection, is to still be able to meet people, because we attend events and we want to maintain that human connection. So thinking about how do you bring that engagement into a virtual event, if it's something that you would have had engagement with before, is really important.
Yes, we have our next town hall. We have a few guys together, and we're going to be talking about how you build rapport with people you've never met through this kind of tool, because I think we all need to get better at it. You know, there's just so many elements that I can't see about people. How are they sitting? Have they turned their body away? You know, that all of these pieces of it that are missing in just being able to show my face. And if you don't even have a visual, if you're just doing by voice, right? So it's tremendous.
And I think that's really important, just to jump in there. Think about that with your agency relationship. I mean, we've had some high stake pitches with clients where we're on video and they're not necessarily on video. And so you think about that you know, element to where we're looking for two-way feedback here. You know, we want to see that stuff as well. And you want to see us on camera and see how we're presenting and see how we're emphasizing certain things, and just, again, maintain that relationship. So as you think about how do you continue to work with your agencies well at a distance, I think video is really important to do that.
So how about, you have any more interesting ideas for us? As we were batting around, you know, how does one give a virtual plant tour? Have you seen folks trying these ideas, and what has worked for you guys?
Well, we're working on, you know, a virtual trade show right now, but we're, you know, the truth is we're experimenting. I don't think we know what's going to work.
It's okay if you tell us what doesn't work. That's
yeah. I think, you know, when you're working as a team, you have to make those choices, and you have to say, let's find out if it works. And if it doesn't, we'll figure out a better way next time. You know, like there isn't, there are some clients who think, well, I want to be sure it's going to work. Well, we don't know that answer. We can't be sure. We're taking our best guess. So I think you have to try things, and you have to figure it out. Like Josh said earlier, they tried 3 minutes and realized 5 minutes is better. So like you just sort of iterate, and you be agile, and you adapt as you go.
Yeah, and the other challenge to that right now too is because we're in the middle of planning video projects for clients that require on-site visits, and thinking through the logistics of travel. You know, what states, what areas is it still safe to travel in? What environment are we putting our team members, our partners, our client contacts in? How are we maintaining, you know, compliance with CDC guidelines and things like that? So, you know, even developing so in theory, you know, developing a virtual plant tour sounds wonderful, and it fills that gap. But in some areas, it's still based on the location of your facility, may not even be possible until certain restrictions and things like that are lifted. By the time you think about getting a bunch of people together to create that content. So there are some ways to do it quickly and more efficiently, but it's certainly a part of that conversation that needs to be accounted for, and then understanding timing and expectations for delivering those kinds of projects too.
And certainly, of course, everything's been done in quite a rush, right? So everybody's trying to quickly substitute and put things in. Have either of you seen anybody using virtual reality in any of these modes?
I have not yet, at least not very well. It's still, we talk about it a lot, but I've yet to see it used in a way that I felt like, wow, that was better than being there for real.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a couple clients that we developed VR executions for pre-pandemic. So this goes back, in some cases a couple years, kind of when VR content was really just starting to make its entrance into the B2B space. It was it was a way to augment the experience in person. Now the technology is such that, more mobile devices are becoming capable of that. So thinking about the hardware requirements can still be a little bit challenging, but it's certainly something that we've done and had success with in the past. We had one manufacturer who made eaves systems for walls, and we used the virtual reality to be able to kind of dive into that wall and look at the layers and see where our client's product and solution was and how it helped make things better. And their audience there was architects. So they're obviously very tech savvy and able to engage with those types of tools. So.
Yeah, and it takes a different way of thinking. Because on Harley Davidson, we tried to, as we introduced their new electric bike, show people what it felt like. And we created you could sit on the bike in a virtual reality experience. And we realized the more we tried to recreate the real feel, the worse it was. So we actually created a fantastical feel, and people loved it because it was more the feeling that you got from that felt more right than trying to recreate reality.
That you're going to drive me off the path on the Harley bike. That's electric. Because how does that feel? There's no engine vibration.
It's very strange. It takes away a lot of what people enjoy about the bike. Yeah, it's very different.
Well, I think you could look to the consumer industry, though. I mean, Carvana, I think many people may be familiar with them through their big push in advertising recently. They sell cars through vending machines, large vending machines essentially. And that's something that a couple of years ago, we probably would have never considered, right? I saw it, it was out, a few years ago. You drive through the big cities, they would have them. And you think, wow, that's kind of interesting. I wonder who actually buys a car out of a vending machine, because you can just go right down to the dealership and test drive a bunch of them and make your decision. But now it makes sense, right? They seem like they're in a really good position to deliver a car with certain guarantees, easy delivery, trial periods, those kinds of things. So you think about how these consumer companies have created new ways to go to market, to deliver their product. In the B2B space, we do have that same opportunity. We can look to some of those other industries for how they did that. Creating that same feel, I mean, you're not going to replicate that, but you can create other ways to kind of provide confidence in the buyer and trust and, focus on those areas.
It does strike me as kind of the evolutionary method of things changing. In 2008 to 2010, we lost a lot of trade shows, and they didn't come back. And yet we almost feel like we didn't miss them, right? So some things were just kind of leftover holdovers. Think we need to do them, but we're really not sure what that ROI is, for example. What was the ROI? Well, we've always gone to the show. We can't not go to the show. That would look bad, but then there is no show. Sure. Now we're in a wholly different environment. That's kind of, again, the environment has pressed us to change. So it'll be fascinating to see how that goes forward. I had a couple of questions come in, so I'm going to fold those, and I'm going to remind folks that are there, please feel free to type your questions directly into the chat window or raise your hand. So if someone has never used an agency, they may have had to either cut staff, or they're not hiring where they needed to be, and they're going to ask an agency to step in. How can they evaluate an agency and decide which one is the right one for them? Yeah, I'll let you both answer this question. Whoever wants to jump in first.
Sure, I'll start, Josh. So, you know, agencies, the normal process is there's a pitch. You invite 3 to 5 agencies you think are qualified, and you give them a problem to solve, or you give them a list of questions. And the way that normally works is clients try to make all things equal. And I'm going to tell you, like, break every rule. You should just trust your gut. Who do you feel comfortable with in the room? Who do you think is going to do the best job for you? Your gut is going to give you a much better answer on who is the right agency for you than any other kind of methodology.
Completely agree. Yep. There's so many agencies out there too. I think the last number I looked at, it's like 6,000 agencies in the US or something, all different sizes. So I think you have to consider what industry you're in, what audience you're trying to reach, and find an agency that has some specialties there, that works with companies in your industry that are adjacent to yours. Obviously not direct competitors. That oftentimes provides a conflict, but look for someone who is servicing maybe similar customers. And so they would have insights and expertise in how to craft strategies and creative deliverables that would engage with that audience, but not have a huge learning curve. Because obviously right now, if you're trying to get things done, you have to do it on a much shorter time frame. You're looking for somebody that can provide immediate perspective on a particular challenge, and not require, you know, months of learning and research to understand your industry, because we're all in really complex industrial markets that the average agency just can't pick up and start doing work for tomorrow. You know, when it comes to design, certainly, but if you're talking about actually crafting communications and writing copy and coming up with unique ways to communicate or solve a particular challenge, you need to find someone that has some expertise in your particular industry. So I think start there. I've seen a huge trend away from the large RFP. That's something that has shifted even pre-pandemic. So certainly some agility there, breaking that process, I think is really important. Finding a short list of agencies, and if you have 2 or 3 projects, why not run a small project through each of them? I think at the end of the day, you're going to get much better output from the agency and much better use of your time, because we know that pitches and things like that, responding to RFPs, can take a tremendous amount of time, not just on the client side to develop it, put it together, run it through the appropriate channels internally for all the stakeholders, the approvals, scheduling those meetings, trying to conduct those things. Find a couple of people that again, to Mark's point, that you know, have a good feeling about, that you've had some conversations with, you've seen some work that they've done, they have the expertise, they've demonstrated it to you, but do some trial projects, and I think you're going to have much better result that way.
So big agency, small agency is, you know, should we go with someone very large because they have extra resources and maybe at this time they actually have more resources, or what are your thoughts on that?
Josh, you want to go? I've got a strong opinion.
I know you've got one too, and I think I'm kind of in the same boat. I mean, we're part of WPI, which is one of the largest independent networks of independently owner-operated agencies. And so when you talk about size, you know, we're an 80-person shop, so we're considered a mid-sized firm. But we have global resources and we do tap them. It's not just lipstick on our agency. You know, we work with them every day on global communications programs. We have in-country resources. So, you know, when you talk about scale, we have that ability, even as a mid-sized firm, to scale up or deliver regional insights. But we also at the same time have ultimate decision-making authority over how we work as an agency, because we are small, we are independently owner-operated. Mark will share some perspectives a little bit on the larger agencies, but oftentimes they're sort of hamstrung by processes and their own stakeholders for profitability.
Yeah, I actually think there's going to be a dramatic shift in the agency business. And while normally you think when things like this happen, the large groups with better financial stability are the ones that survive and the smaller ones go under, I think exactly the opposite is going to happen. Because the smaller groups have stronger relationships with their clients, and they can think long-term, they can think like an independent business and what's right for us and our clients and do the right thing. Where the larger ones are, they're following the stock market just like other large companies are. So my advice is, like, I would really be looking at mid-size and smaller firms, because I've been at some of the largest firms and I've started my own small firm. Even at the largest firms, you're going to find there's 5, 6 key people that are the ones that drive your business on the agency side. Yes, there's other resources that they use, but it comes down to a handful of people that really drive your business for you. And those handful of people can be at an 80-person shop or a 25-person shop, but you don't need 800 people.
Mhm.
Well, and I think just kind of playing off of that then too, procurement is so involved with these industrial companies in procuring marketing services as they are with procuring raw materials and other things to help manufacture and deliver products. But procurement usually comes into it without a lot of experience in procuring marketing services. They typically treat it as if it's a commodity type buy. And what we're seeing right now, is manufacturers are running into problems creating and manufacturing products because their procurement team and their procurement processes have led them to a place where they're reliant on too few suppliers. And they might have one large supplier that got all the business because they put the best price out and it was based on a volume buy, but they get all of their materials from one region and now they can't deliver a particular product because there's disruptions in the supply chain. And so as you think about the small to large conversation for agencies, I would apply that same sort of level of thinking is, are we reliant on one firm for one thing? And are they based in one region? As we think about trying to ensure business continuity in the future, having a group of small agencies that are spread across a few different regions that can handle specific business challenges or work with specific parts of the business, I think you give yourself a better chance at not just getting the best strategic and creative insights for that particular region, but you also give yourself a little bit more confidence and security in ensuring business continuity during a pandemic like this.
Yeah, distributed functions, right? Absolutely.
Yep, for sure.
To survive. So let me flip the question. And what is it? And this might be, I'll just say, I don't know, maybe you don't have any clients on this call, so it'll be okay. But what makes a good client for you guys? Like, what are the behaviors or the benefits that a client can do for an agency that makes the relationship long lasting and very successful?
I am shocked that most clients don't understand this, but the way you treat your agency is directly proportional to the type of work you get back.
Mm.
I have a good friend and colleague who just left Coke, but ran all of the agency relationships at Coke. And he was a big believer in this. If you treat your agency like crap, and a lot of clients do because they think of them as a supplier, you're going to get back half of what you're paying them. If you treat them well, you're going to get back 1.5. And the truth is, we're a people business. All of us got into the agency business because at heart, we're sort of creatives. Whether you're an account person, a strategist, the CEO, you care about what you do and you want clients to think you did a good job. So there's a real simplistic part of this that I think clients forget about, which is treat them like you want to be treated, value the work they do for you, and they will run over brick walls for you or through them too.
Yep, absolutely. I just treat them like they're a part of your team and like they're in there in the office in the same business, working towards common goals. Transparency, providing insights into what the real business goals are, providing insights into, how other stakeholders in your firm feel about the work, the business challenge, the outcome, those kinds of things, not holding any of that back, just being as transparent as possible. Being flexible, that's certainly, if we're trying things together, failure is an option. And there are times when failure is acceptable and we learn from it, so kind of working through that, getting some processes in place to innovate and experiment, push yourself outside of your comfort zone, as far as creativity. The most exciting things that you do from a creative standpoint are oftentimes the ones that make you the most uncomfortable too. And so thinking through how do you really allow the agency to challenge you without constantly having to run into brick walls internally with stakeholders to get things approved, things like that. So just thinking through that a bit and coming up with processes, providing the agency insights into the stakeholders that need to approve these, what their wants and needs and challenges are, and how they can begin to shape things, I think will go a long way too.
I just want to add one quick thing to what Josh said. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying as saying coddle your agency, or you need to treat them with high expectations, and they perform better when you have high expectations of them. And be honest with them when things aren't working or things you don't like, because that's how they know how to fix things, right? So
Yep.
treat them with respect, but ask them to perform because they want to perform.
Great.
Yep. Agreed.
Good. I'm going to make one last call for any more questions, if anybody's got some there. Otherwise, I have decided to put you in prognostication mode, right? So you can think for a second, but I'm going to ask both of you to try to predict what things are going to look like 6 months from now, and what you think then we should be doing to meet that spot 6 months from now. All right, who wants to try that first?
I'll go.
All right.
I think a lot of clients are going to be evaluating their agency relationships and their marketing relationships in general. And I think they're going to be looking at, do we really need that trade show now that it's gone? Or is this agency the best fit? Or have we been just so busy that we couldn't take a minute to say, let's make a change, because as soon as we finished one project, we were behind on the next one. So I think we're going to see a lot of change happen in marketing in general. A lot of long-time relationships, I think, are going to fall by the wayside because perhaps they were just there out of comfort and convenience versus were they really performing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, and I would just say, continued focus on more strategy versus just transactional. I think this, in the short term, we're going to be forced into a place where we have to execute, and just iterate from there and react quickly. Strategies are changing and evolving. But that's going to become part of the long-term approach here, thinking about, okay, how do we sort of pre-plan for disruption? How do we think about having a plan B in place for every single thing that we do? Maybe it's even to the extent of, okay, we're going to do this big customer event. It's going to be in person. We're inviting our customers in. It's a very, high stakes strategic investment for the company on an annual basis, but we're going to plan for a digital component just in case people cannot make it to the actual event itself. And so those were always afterthoughts. I've been part of planning many different conferences, and, we always said, well, the digital part does cost a lot to plan for and execute and to do it well. But the sort of loss of not being able to do that event can be catastrophic to a business as well. So I think, just being able to move from just transactional to more of a strategic viewpoint in the long term, but then really just planning for, that constant pressure for, scenario planning for plan B. So.
Great. All right, one more call for questions from the audience. And if not, I'm going to let you guys, if you'd like to, add any other comments you want based on no question from me, if there's something else you'd like to share. Anybody? Okay.
I think we've covered a lot. Yeah, I don't think I have any.
I want to let everybody know, of course, that what's been on the screen is Josh's and Mark's contact information. Feel free to take that down, and I know either of the guys would be happy to answer questions directly if you wanted to email them. You also see my email address, as well as Rand Mendez and Becky Williams from ISBM, so feel free to contact us. And then I'm going to run one more poll, so if Lori can help me with this next poll. She's clicking for me. This tells us how we're doing and how to get better. So here's 5 choices that you can have on the poll. I didn't cover the topics that I thought I was going to see, so that wasn't very good for me. And then the middle is, hey, this is okay, but it's not as good as some other events I've been at. And the top is 5 outstanding. So if you put up the poll, Lori, and let people give us some feedback, we'll see what people think.
I guess Josh and I can't vote in this poll.
Okay, yeah, that would be all right. Let's wait for a few more. I want to at least get it over 60% if we can. So if a few more of you would just give us your feedback, that'd be great. All right, Lori, I guess we'll take it right there because that's where we are. So thanks. We had some good discussions and some takeaways, and we haven't gotten to the outstanding level that I'd like yet, but we'll get there. So thanks for that. And then let's hit this next slide, Lori, if I think you're still running it maybe. There it is. I just want to let you all know what's coming up next. So we have reconfigured all of our educational programming that we had been planning to do in person in June, and all of our amazing faculty, several of which are faculty at universities, so they've been forced to do Zoom classes as well, have now become much better at it. And we have restructured them so they're not all in one day. There's a few hours over several days for many of these, and so you'll see in the schedule there. Value and pricing. We did our very first pricing and crisis course with Joanne Smith, and it was amazing. And so, boy, if you are thinking about what you need to be doing in pricing at this time, she's got it. And now it's over a couple of days, so I think it'll be much more bite-sized in taking it in. We've got competitor analysis coming up. Boy, we need to know what everybody's doing at this moment, so that's a good one. And then June 17th, we have our next town hall, which we'll be running. June 23 and 24, we have another course, Winning at New Products, which is Bob Cooper, and he's the guy when it comes to StageGate and Agile. We've got VOC in the Age of COV, which is their Voice of a Customer training, which is a brand new course that Jerry Katz has developed just for this time in a half-a-day format. And then we've got a new one coming probably in the August timeframe, creating competitive advantage. All of these things are on the website. And then we also want to make sure that you remember to check out B2B Pulse, which is our updated library, which has 3 or 4 new items in it every week that we've been curating. So it's not just a dump of things that are there, but our faculty and our staff look at things that are coming out and pick the ones that are good. But there's a new one that just came out, phenomenal, that we'll be sending out to you all in the next Marketing in Uncertain Times email. So you can check out Pulse, and of course these recordings are also there in that library. All right, I'm gonna go one last time. Anybody have more questions for us? This was fascinating for me, and I've learned a lot. I'm still waiting though for my virtual reality tour, or maybe I need to buy the electronic Harley Davidson bike. Does it make sense? Do they like have a?
No, it doesn't make any sound at all.
Yeah.
Which could be kind of dangerous because it's hard to see motorcyclists, but you're used to hearing them. So
Yeah.
when you have a hard time seeing them and you don't hear them, we'll see how that plays out.
So for those of you that don't really know, Mark and I have discovered we're kind of car people. And so we've been trying not to digress, but now that I actually have still 7 more minutes, we can continue. But hey, I drive a Tesla, right? So I have a 3. And they've been talking about adding some kind of sound to help people know that you're there. And I'm like, well, then I ought to be able to program it with anything I want, any noise that I want. Wouldn't that be? And how creative. There are some internal functions of the Tesla which are odd. There's a lot of games that they put on that screen, right? You're basically driving an iPad. And so, and every time there's a new release of software, the first thing they list are the games, which I don't really follow that age group. But there is a feature in there that has a whoopee cushion that you can put under any seat in the car. We'll end on that. Yep.
I think so. It's a good thing to end on.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate it all the time, everybody. And again, this will be available to be replayed in about 24 hours. And Lori, thank you so much for helping behind the scenes. Everybody stay safe. Thanks so much.